The tape is from 1994. It calls itself Volume 3 of its chronicles. I couldn't tell you much about what came before it. They're VHS tapes, obviously available via some sort of mail order. And while I haven't listened to every single minute, it appears to be a conspiratorial tape describing how aliens from Mars are using the moon as a base from which to observe humans. It's got a little bit of everything. A person speaking with authority and a bunch of different degrees after their names, a set of interstitials with animation and slow panning over scientific photos with red circles and lines to indicate all of the unspoken truths. At 20 years old, an interlaced VHS video, it is, by any measure, a relic. A relic of the kind of moon conspiracies that existed at the time, a relic of the VHS format, and a relic of how information like this is sold to people. And while I have to say I don't believe any of it, there's a certain dark charm to what it's trying to do. And what is it trying to do? Let's talk about that. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, a podcast about technology, history, and getting myself out of debt. Thanks to Daniel Boyd, Jeff Atwood, and the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. I'm only seeing this tape because it was in a storage unit and was sent to me. I don't judge VHS tapes that go into my digitization rig other than if they stick or are broken or are covered in mold. These two tapes were well protected, as many multi-level marketing and conspiracy tapes are. Sold for expensive prices, pitched as being the secret facts that nobody else will dare tell you, they tend to come very well protected. They also tend not to have been played too many times, because once you learn what they have to say, you get it. You don't need to revisit it. The production quality and options available to an outlier production house are pretty good in the mid-1990s. The combination of rental time at editing houses or having equipment of your own meant that all of the major aspects of professional videos were at your fingertips. You could put together something that looked pretty darn good. With a green screen, with using computer graphics or digitized photos to tell your story, it could look, to the person at the time, like you not only knew what you were talking about, but had clearly gotten the backing of professional media in telling your story. And like a lot of those particular feelings, looking at them 20 years later, we realize how completely arbitrary that judgment is. Convincing people that not only are you coming from a position of truth and authority, but of backing and consistency, turns out to be not that hard if you have the confidence. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. It just matters how well you're presenting it. When I was digitizing multi-level marketing tapes, I found out later by doing research that some of these speakers who were acting like they were just folks, well, they were professional speakers. They could be speaking about toothpaste one week, selling a boat the next, or doing this particular conference, telling you that fruits and vegetables in extract form were the undisputed way to cure cancer. There was an undercurrent. You could bring in consultants and professionals to act like they were just another part of the crowd. You could also rent very good-looking banquet halls to have your convention, and you could also, through the use of videotape, sell these audiovisual packages that would let people buy them and have it all look like they are being given forbidden information. Now, let me be clear. My business was and kind of is forbidden information that never had the backing of ending up in the main space of culture. That's my favorite thing to get my hands on. Zines professing all sorts of different opinions, websites that come off like a Zen cone of completely distracted ideas, text files that went from bulletin board to bulletin board on the strength of how weird they were and how fast they drew you into their worldview. This has been my strength for many, many years now. I love collecting them. I love providing them. But in doing so, maybe I feel less sure that people understood the conditions at which I was offering them. For me, information is beneficial to look at with a mind that does not assume it has been curated for its truth. If I send you a unusually well-made but very, very conspiratorial piece of work, I kind of had the feeling that you would feel like I did, that some of these things, maybe all of them, could be quickly debunked. Nowadays, we have so many more tools for doing comparisons to find out who was the person behind this particular writing, or where people fall when it comes to a specific argument about something in science or technology or politics. I always felt that by assembling a library of all of these variant ideas, we would benefit. We would benefit because sometimes buried among even the most conspiratorial or strange or malinformed piece of work will be nuggets of insight. In fact, sometimes it's that particular problem that we are encountering. The idea that by being an outsider, people tell you that not everything you're reading makes sense or is valid, but you persist. You push through that because you know that there might be some connections, some truths that are buried within. Or it's entertaining. During the 1980s, I collected an incredible amount of material from the MUFON network, MUFON, which was dedicated to UFOs and therefore government conspiracy, including a text file that was written by someone named Ernie Lazar, who wrote what I thought was an otherworldly science fiction view of an alien race that had infiltrated us to the point of using us as both allies and food. I thought it was really bizarre, and I put it right at the front of the UFO collection at textfiles.com. Imagine my surprise when people let me know that decades, actual decades later, Ernie Lazar was linking to the textfiles.com collections of his essay because he said this was proof of how valid it was. He was showing up on talk shows talking about his conspiracy theories and his credentials while using me as one of those credentials. It is all still very amusing to me to see that play out. But over time, I start to become aware of the real motivations of many of these works, which is grift, con artistry, and making money off of people not being informed or susceptible to being deluded, to being told things are not like they were or that they are not like they are, and that for a little bit of money you can either break out of that perceived mental prison or wear a very jaunty t-shirt that shows other people that you don't just fall for the line. Ironically, the verbiage is very much one of isolation. Nobody understands you. You stand alone. Only a select few get this information. It's gatekeeping at its worst. When I put these files up, I make them available to all. I've never been one for charging access just because I happen to assemble them. Switching from textfiles.com to archive.org has just been more of that. watching people upload all sorts of materials, from incredibly important birth control information all the way down to bizarre mentions of UFOs and how they've landed and how we know these aliens must act and be part of our society, hiding as humans among us. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of zines and files and books and movies on the Internet Archive. So it's natural that when I was going through piles of VHS tape, seeing a brand new conspiracy video make its way into digital form, my immediate reaction is one of delight. I think that we learn from the past. I think that we can extract from it an ability to understand the context of the world we live in. But as I get older, I also have come to realize there's an unexpected secondary aspect. Like picking up an old piece of metal that teaches us how metal was made without understanding that it contains poisons and radioactivity that was considered acceptable at the time. These videos are there in a way that certain susceptible minds could derive from them a belief that their obscurity and their age represent the truth being hidden away and suddenly realized, and that only the few who are being told by logic and reason and everyone around them that they are probably wrong will stand apart and believe in it anyway. And that, I'm sad to say, is the battle that is raging in the future. Do I not digitize these tapes, worried about their effect, worried about what they'll do? Well, no. It has always been my philosophy and always has been my policy. Get it to the next generation and let them make intelligent decisions about what they find in it. The value of even corrupted, broken, wrong, and weird information will be found, either through analysis, comparison, or a deeper understanding of the subjects at hand. I still make that leap of faith that I'm not just handing a radioactive watch into the hands of a teenager and telling them it will really teach them the time. I like to think that, compared with context and searching and understanding, a person could derive from this meaning far beyond what was intended to be sold for $39.99 in 1994, warning, as it did, of the moon base constantly watching us on behalf of the aliens on Mars, who are always plotting and planning. Maybe after these, I'll switch to home movies. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, thanks to James Bekoyanu, Ernie Hershey, Michael Rubin, Dilip Reddy, Sean Kelly, Trixie the Cat, Martin, Sembiance, Benjamin Guts, and Anonymous, along with the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. One last story. I attended a vintage computer festival decades ago. One of the speakers was Wayne Green, the editor of Byte magazine, who was going to come to talk about the beginning of Byte magazine and how he was the editor of multiple major magazines in both computers and radio technology. But before him, on the slate, was somebody who had worked on several NASA projects, who gave us slides talking about the work being done to make these machines work, this incredible accomplishment, and the way that it depended so much on individuals working together. It was a very inspiring presentation. This old man hobbled with some support out of the speaking room, and Wayne Green began to set up and then turned to the audience and said, Should I speak about how the moon landings aren't real? And fools that we were, we said, sure, Wayne, go ahead. And for 1 hour, Wayne Green gave us a greatest hits collection of every way in which moon landings were wrong. And as he did this, he was a very persuasive speaker. He was very effective in moving from point to point to point. This was a well-rehearsed speech about the moon landings not being real. His commentary about ways in which the moon landings were faked stuck with me enough that when I got home, I read up on them. These are well-worn complaints. These are well-researched and responded to speculations. Almost all of them can be answered as, we spent way too much money to go to the moon. We spent a pile of money to go to the moon. That's why it seems like it does. That's why cameras work so well. If you can build a $100,000 camera that's built to take a few dozen shots under terrible conditions, it's very hard to compare that to something you bought down at the store. But more important than all of that, of a moon hoax discussion, it taught me a lot more about Wayne Green. Because Wayne Green had always worked as an outlier. At a time when people said there shouldn't be a computer magazine, he did it. When people told him he couldn't put out an issue every month about a subject that there wouldn't be enough information, he did it. Over and over again, Wayne Green would make a magazine, sell it to a company, have them ruin it, buy it at a bargain price, and then build it up again, only to sell it one more time. This was his life. Always on the outside, always questioning everything. And, like working with some metals can poison your system, being told the world works a certain way, backed up by evidence and science, had fallen off of Wayne's map in his later life. And we, and no doubt many others, got a 1-hour lecture about the results.